say, what's that? It's Pat.
Okay, hello everyone. This is Patrick Argiro, aka Cousin Pat, and this is my first interview with an MMA fighter who is shirtless in a car. So I'm breaking new grounds here. My guest today is Juan Adams, also known as the Kraken. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So let's get into it a little bit today. I'm glad we're talking because I think you have a fight coming up on July 25th, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So what I want to do is I had a plan in my head. I'm doing this big podcast with this woman named Jill Nicolini, and she's very well known. And I was like, oh, but now I'm talking to fighters, and like I just talked to I'm gonna butcher his name, but Dricus Duplessis. He's fighting on the undercard for Connor. And so I'm like, well, I need to get that out now because that's happening this weekend. So I want to get your fight out now. So you're 6'5".
Yeah.
So you're clearly a featherweight, right?
No, I actually have to cut a lot of weight to make heavyweight, but that's a different discussion.
No, I'm just joking, man. You look like I gotta tell you something. You got that look where you seem like a nice guy, and I'm sure to people, but do you get that look every once in a while where you put the fear of God in people?
Yeah. I actually, it's funny. I work in behavioral health care for kids.
Yo, and me too,
yeah,
man.
Yeah. So when I walk in, like, if they're acting up, if I get angry or I put on the dad voice for them, they get terrified. It's pretty funny.
Yeah. But it's just all for show, right? It's just to like let them know, like, hey.
Yeah.
So let's get into this because I'm super excited. When I sent you an email, Twitter, whatever you call them, a tweet, you were like, yeah, man, let's go over it. So you were one of these professional athletes where you excelled in high school football and you eventually you tried out for a defensive lineman for the Indianapolis Colts and Green Bay Packers, right? And
right.
I guess it did. How was that? It didn't go the way you had planned. Which this is not an MMA show. Yeah. This is a motivational show. I just have to interview about 25 people who are MMA fighters.
So it that was a really weird way how that one came up because I did play football in high school, and for me, at that time in my life, the only thing important to me was, becoming a Division I athlete, right? So I got injured the first game of my senior year, and me and the coach didn't really get along. So even when I came back, I didn't get a lot of playing time. But I lost all the offers that I had. So a lot of schools were like, "Oh, you can come be a preferred walk-on," and all that, but I just didn't love football. I loved wrestling at the time. So I said, well, if I'm going to be a preferred walk-on anyway, I might as well do it for the sport that I love. So I went on. I just took that wrestling season super seriously. I went 5th in state, All-American at the Disney Duels. And before that, I had already agreed to go to Virginia Military Institute. I took a visit there. It wasn't, I took a visit in the springtime, like late semester. So it was after all the rat line and all that stuff. So I wasn't really aware of what the school was really like. But I loved it. I talked to the wrestling coaches and the football coaches. They were a small Division I school. So they were going to let me do both. So I wrestled there. I went out for spring football. I was gonna end up being like third string, and they were a bad team at the time, and I didn't really like a lot of the stuff that I saw. So I figured I was just gonna focus on wrestling, and then right before I graduated, my 5th year there, the Colts contacted my coach, and so it wasn't like a real tryout. I did a lot of workouts, and they would watch my workouts through this facility. It was at the time it was CES, which I believe stood for Cutting Edge Sports. Now it's ATH. But at the time, so the Colts watched a lot of my stuff, and I had an agent. He was sending my info to, I believe, the Cardinals and one other team like out there. And then the Packers came down to evaluate a group of us, and I was one of the guys in that group. So it didn't really work out. They every team pretty much said the same thing. You need another year. So rather than focus on that, I decided to put all my eggs in the MMA basket at that time.
So you were 5th in the state, and where did you go to school? Because the obvious.
I went to Strake Jesuit College Prep, which is a private school, but we were forced to compete in UIL, which is against all the public schools. So we were in the biggest division, which at the time was 5A. Now I believe it goes up to 6A in Texas, and Strake still competes in 6A.
And from that school, you were still able to get tryouts from the NFL.
Well, yeah, because I went to Virginia Military Institute for college. And yeah, from that school, I was still able to get tryouts. So it's crazy. What a lot of people have this misconception that you have to go to a major school to excel athletically, and that's really not the case. If you have the talent, they'll find you anywhere.
Yeah, they'll find you. And so you were 5th in the state in Virginia in wrestling at
No, in Texas, in high school. That was high school.
Okay. All right, my bad. I got to tell you a story real quick. I only like to do, it's thundering over here. I only like to do one interview a day, right? And what happened is I did the Duplessis interview, and then I recently lost my dad, right? So
Right.
I check on my mom, and I'm like, Mom, hey, how you doing? Blah, blah. And it was only supposed to be a quick conversation. I'm like, oh, I'm going to interview this MMA fighter. And she's like, oh, that's nice. So anyway, how are you? And I'm like, no, listen, I really got to go. but I also did a lot of research on you. And sometimes I got to tell you, Wikipedia is not always right. Sometimes they throw shit in there that isn't true, but still that's amazing that you're right where they will find you. Is it more of a hurdle? Sure, but if you have that talent, they will find you. And I think that's great, and that's a good lesson for people, because this is not an MMA show, although most of my guests have been MMA fighters, because you all have such interesting stories. Like I'm assuming, I don't know your background, but I'm assuming you didn't grow up wealthy, or no. So tell me a little bit about if you don't mind, because you said nothing was off limits. Tell me a little bit about your childhood. How was that? How did you grow up? And were you always a bigger kid?
Yeah. So, when I was really young, my parents got divorced, obviously, when I was like 5, I believe. And the only reason that I was given the educational opportunities that I was given was because it was something that was really important to my mother and also my grandmother. My grandmother put all 4 of her children into really good schools, and and it opened up opportunities for them, which then opened up opportunities for me. So when I was very young, my mom tried to put my brother and I into the school that she went to for elementary school, and that school was close to the med center, which is where my mom worked. We lived in Third Ward, Texas, more specifically Yellowstone, which There's the Yellowstone, which is kind of on the edge of Third Ward, and then you hit the freeway and it becomes Sunnyside on the other side of that,
What
which
area of
isn't
Texas is that? What area of Texas is that?
south. It's southeast, so it's in Houston, and it's in
Okay.
the south. It's technically, I would guess, south central, but more so on the southeast side of
Okay.
Houston.
Okay.
And so from there we didn't go to our zone schools. I went to Roberts Elementary, which at the time had a magnet program with, I think, like a 5% acceptance rate.
Wow.
My brother and I got into that. I excelled there academically. It was a fine arts school at the time. I'm not very artistic, but I knew how to play violin, piano. From
Wow.
there I started doing Cub Scouts, which then opened more doors for me. And then from there, the middle school I went to was it's a Vanguard, so it's all gifted and talented Vanguard Middle School. You have to apply to go there. So technically it's a public school, but it's not really a public school. And that was T.H. Rogers. And from there, I then and my mom learned about the high school that I ended up going to, which was Straight Jesuit College Prep. And I went there. I ended up testing, like I was in the top 10% of the test scores. So I got a scholarship to go to that school. And then through sports, another alumni then offered to pay my scholarship for my last 2 years at Strake. And so all those opportunities, we ended up being in environments that weren't really reflective of the means that we were living under, right?
Yes, I understand what you mean. I get it. I get it.
Right.
I get
So,
it.
and my mom sacrificed a lot. I mean, she made good money for like a single person, but when you're raising two children that are basically grown men based on our size, like it's hard. So, but she made it, and that's kind of where I got my drive to just constantly. I'm always looking to do something. I work a full-time job. When I was in the UFC, I stopped working and just trained full-time, and mentally it just wasn't good for me. And
Really?
now, yeah, it's not a good. I had free time, and then on top of that, it just allowed me a lot of time to really be in my own head for the most part, and that's not really. And I've always kind of struggled with anxiety and depression and things like that. So when I have too much free time, it's not good. Now I've done a lot of work since then. Like I've been in therapy, and you know, I recognize the benefits of therapy very young. And in my college, you got therapy for free. So I went there and I utilized, so at every point in my life, I've utilized pretty much the tools that were there for me. And it's helped me greatly to get to where I am now. But you know.
Let me ask you a question that a lot of I gotta say I'm very surprised. I'm a former stand-up comedian, and I'm also you gotta know who you are. And like I'm not tall, I'm not strong, but I got a good heart. Like I know this about me, and so people seem to be. And I love children. I love what you do for a living, and that's got to feel so rewarding. I mean, because I tell people when I went through hard times. Now you're working for a living, so it's not like you're volunteering, but hey, we got to make a living, right? But to do something where you're helping children, I absolutely love that. I'm trying to do that with other places right now, work with children that maybe don't see another opportunity. And so I had a lot of UFC fighters. I was very surprised who opened up to me, and hey, they know I'm recording, so it's not like I'm saying anything. Because have you ever, and I will say this, I have at moments felt, I've never act on it, I worked through it, but have you ever felt suicidal?
I wouldn't say suicidal because I've never had an urge to take my own life. What I have noticed though, there's been times, really low points, especially like right when my mom passed away and when she was going through that. And when things weren't going well in college with sports and everything, there were times where I didn't want to exist anymore. And it was more of an existential crisis type deal. Like I didn't want to be here. I didn't want to be, you know, and I saw all these circumstances that I was living under, and I wanted to eliminate the possibility of going through that. Right. And it wasn't that I wanted to end my own life. I just wanted to not exist in this realm anymore. And so I engaged in a lot of self-destructive tendencies. I started drinking very heavily. I would then drive afterwards. I had this very fuck it attitude towards life. I was down for whatever and ever. And, I never really engaged in drugs or anything, but this is just an increase in very high risk behaviors that I saw myself doing. And, the last kind of melding point was, it's also where I just started working. I spread myself super thin. And kind of my breaking point, I was working 6 jobs at this point.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. And I ended up, I was driving home from nightclub one night, and it was like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and I had to be up for work at 7 again. And I was driving and I fell asleep at the wheel, and I swerved off, and I drove between a light pole and a transformer box, and I just narrowly missed both of them. And my car wasn't total, but I lost a side mirror, and my bumper was kind of messed up, and that was it. But
that's a waking up.
Yeah. And so that's kind of when I started going to therapy again and all that. And then I had a couple breakups that really pushed me back towards therapy. Even when I was out here in Albuquerque, I moved to Albuquerque, and I think it was a pretty bad interaction with a chick that I was trying to date at the time, and it got pretty dark for me, and that's when I went back on antidepressants, and I got a job. I was like, I need, because I wasn't doing anything with my free time. I was just training 3 or 4 times a day, but that left 20 hours. I can only sleep 6 hours, so I've got 14 hours throughout the day at this point, to where I'm just doing whatever. And so yeah, so finding a purpose really helped with that.
Well, I gotta say, I got a couple of things I want to say. Juan, you are me, only a much taller, bigger, more muscular, with better hair version of me. But you are me, because I related so much to what you were saying. We get caught up, especially with the women thing. Like I had 3 relationships, and at the end of it, I talked to a therapist, and this a while ago, and becoming a therapist has helped me so much, because I was able to do deep dives on what I need to do for people, but then also I applied it to myself. And then you hit one relationship, and then the second and the third one, and you say, fuck this. Like, I'm focusing on me. You know what?
Right.
Love, not all of them were bad, just they were what they were. And the situation was the situation. But
right.
If you are you a big Avengers guy, movie guy?
Yeah, I am.
Okay. So I'm going to tell you.
Love comics.
Oh, dude, I can't wait for the Black Widow. It's finally coming out. It's a prequel. And actually, not to geek out here, but I'm a geek. Snake Eyes, which is G.I. Joe or Origins, is coming out too. And I love all that crap. But I will tell you this.
Yeah.
I will tell you this. When I say suicidal, you said something I want to clarify. I would never do it, but I felt like I didn't want to exist. And I wish, I wouldn't say I wish, but at that moment, when he snapped his fingers and everyone disappeared, I was like, that would be perfect. And I
Right.
was in such a place where I had to give my gun. I gave my gun to a friend because that's what they recommend. And I've had psychologists and psychiatrists tell me I did the same thing. Like they did that too, because everybody struggles. And it's just like, you know what? You hurt yourself, you stab yourself, you go, ow. But with a gun, that's it. There's no like there's no,
Yeah.
that's it. So I just said, hey man, could you hold this for me? And now I'm fine. And but I understand exactly what you were saying, and I just think this is beautiful that you're opening up like this. Um, and I hope the fact that you're opening up like this actually gets you laid, because that's great too. Because women like sensitive men. Uh,
Well,
former stand-up comedian. You know, bad
yeah,
comic, but
yeah.
whatever.
I don't need much help in that department.
No,
I'm pretty.
no, I'm sure you don't. I'm sure you don't. But it was just a joke. But
Yeah.
let me ask you a question. I got some questions here. I asked questions that are MMA based, and I asked about the mental health aspect, which you talked about. And then I asked like silly, super, like I'm a 12-year-old boy in a 46-year-old body. And so I got a lot of questions. Well, not a lot, a few. When you start fighting for the UFC, and okay, so you're on a Dana White Contender Series, you do good there. Then you get on UFC on Fox, Fox 31, and you do well there. Is there a major difference? Because I think I know the answer, because I've talked to a few guys. When you start fighting on ESPN, even on the undercards, preliminary, whatever it is, the attention is much higher, right? You get the
Right.
is it much higher on ESPN than it would be on Fox? Is it that much of a
No, the biggest thing for me, it was at a point where, growing up for me, I always felt that I had to be better than other people at everything in order to be loved, really. Because my mom was super busy with work. I had a younger brother, and I just felt that like in my family, if you weren't excellent at something, you weren't noticed, right?
right?
So my whole life I found myself chasing these accolades for the approval of people around me. And that's something that I always wanted. I felt at that time in my life, I always wanted to be adored, right? I wanted to be a star.
Who doesn't?
Um,
You
and
know?
then
Yeah.
in college, it got, it would get, and I felt like I'm doing all these things. I'm doing all these things. Why am I not recognized? Why am I not getting the recognition I deserve? Why am I not a star yet? And when I got to the UFC, that was my focus, not the fighting. And that's where I say I wasn't mature enough at that time in my life, and I wasn't aware enough to really focus on the things that I needed to focus on. And losing all that, because at that point, I've reached what I wanted to do. In college, it was crazy. I always talked about being in the UFC, and people would laugh at me. They're like, "There's no way." And then I did it, and I did everything that people doubted I would be able to do. In high school, I got made fun of because I was like, I'm going to be a pro athlete. And, people would just make fun of me.
Who made fun of
Like,
you?
yeah,
What
like
happened
you're not
in
going
high
to be
school?
Division One, blah, blah, blah. So I went and I did all those things that people made fun of me for having aspirations of doing. And then, I get there and it wasn't the payoff that I thought it should have been. I thought I would have felt, appeased at that moment, and I wasn't. And I had achieved all these goals that I set more so to prove other people wrong. So I did all this stuff to placate other people's and to validate myself in their eyes, but I never focused on what I needed to feel validated. And I noticed, and at that point, that year off that I took when I lost everything, when I wasn't in the UFC, I left my hometown, I moved out here. I had a decision to make. I can go back home to my security blanket, or, I can really go all in and give it one more go of just trying as hard as I could, but with the right reasons this time. And during that year, you know, I had to really sort through who it was that I wanted to be and what I wanted to be, what I wanted to do. And, you know, also I had to reflect on the times of my life where I was truly happy. And, you know, that it led me to the line of work that I do now. So now I find my fulfillment and my reward in helping the kids that I help with and working with those kids, because I don't want other kids to go through what I went through as a kid of seeking that constant validation from a world that ultimately doesn't care about you.
Can I tell you something? I want to make a recommendation to you, and then you can make a recommendation to I almost said your children, but they probably are like your children in a way. I study Stoic theory or Stoicism, and
Yeah.
a lot of what you're saying is that where focus on yourself, don't worry about the accolades, because you know what, whether you are Conor McGregor, Tom Brady, we're all, whether you're this is an actual video that this gentleman, I got to get his name and I want to have him on my podcast, because I've had other people other than MMA, but it's been mainly MMA. But you know, whether you make $100 million or not, we're going to die. We're all going to die. And so you want to live a good life, but at the same time, worrying about certain things, they're not helpful, right? But we don't know until when we're in it, we think it's the most important thing in the world. I'm so sorry about that. So let me ask you this: when you work with these kids, so are you a BHT? Is that what you are? Or
No. So I mean, because of HIPAA, I can't really say a lot of details, but I can describe my role. So I'm a program director at this point. And what that means is, you know, if a kid's in crisis or something, I have my residential counselors underneath me and a supervisor that kind of supervises the whole place. And then I'm a programmer. So I'm in charge of that unit, like those 9 or 10 or however many kids I have to meet with their therapists, their treatment teams, all of that. I have to read their files. I have to know what their triggers and their coping skills are. And I have to make sure that the people beneath me that are working with them directly are acting in accordance with that. So that's what I do. And then I also, you know, I am that ear for them because I'm their direct superior. So my office door is always open and my office is on a unit. And within that, like if there's a crisis or something, then I go and I provide the one-on-one attention to that kid until somebody else can get there. And that's pretty much like that's what I can say about what I do.
no, that's fine. I wasn't trying to be nosy. I mean, you're in the same field in a way. We're in the same field. So, and I just wanted to ask you, but I want to tell a quick story. It's very quick. You don't need the self-validation. I could see that you have moved past that. Dude, I've been sick for like a month and I cannot get rid of this cough, so I apologize. But have you ever heard of a gentleman called, I'm going to butcher his name. It's like Muay Thai. It's called he's Moiti Horenstein.
No, I haven't.
Okay, he's old school UFC. So he fought Mark Coleman and in UFC 10, and then you know Mark Coleman, right?
Right.
And then he fought this other wrestler who's actually considered better than Mark Coleman, and he was named Mark Kerr. And this is back when I would love to interview both those guys, but they were a little bit enhanced.
Right.
You know, and so Muay Thai Horenstein, he's 0-2 in the UFC, but the guy's a killer. Like he represented he represented the United States in a particular type of karate, and he was the world heavyweight champion, and he was jacked and he was a stud. but he had bad matchups there. But what I told him was, and he doesn't need the validation either, is listen, man, you made it. Like if I could throw one pitch in the major leagues, if I threw one pitch in the major leagues and Ken Griffey Jr. hit a home run off me, I would still tell that story to my grandkids. I threw a pitch and Ken Griffey Jr. hit. So I told him, you made it to the major leagues of MMA. You were in UFC.
Right.
And he works with children in a different way. He runs a school and he works mainly with children, and he doesn't charge a lot. And I would recommend checking him out. He's in the Miami area, Moity Horenstein, and he's a killer. But he made it in the major leagues, and you made it in the major leagues of fighting. So you don't need the validation, but I just want you to know, like, hey, you have that in the back of your head. Like, I was a killer. Like, I was in the UFC. I mean, you actually, not that I treat all my guests the same. I don't clout chase, as they call it. Now, clout is a bad word. If I don't know why it's a bad word. My friend one time told me cloud chaser, and I didn't want to ask him what it meant. So I typed in cloud chaser and some IT term came up, and I was like, and then I said, what's a cloud chaser? And they explained it to me. I'm happy that anybody wants to talk to me, but you actually had some success in the UFC. So you should, I don't want to sound like, a parent here, but you should be proud of yourself. You're like, be proud of your accomplishments. But let me ask you this. What kind of support system do you have where you are? Because you said you live in a place now. Are did you move there for the job?
No, I actually moved out to Albuquerque for fighting. So what happened is, throughout my entire time in the UFC, I was in a pretty bad relationship. Not that she was a bad person. I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
It was just a bad relationship. And
yeah.
And
Would you say
so
toxic? Would you say toxic?
I wouldn't say it was toxic, and she wasn't toxic either. We just fundamentally disagreed on a lot of things, and it's just there's a certain level of reason that emotions cloud, and I'm a pretty intellectual person. I try and remain objective on a lot of things, and so I don't like to say like people are less intelligent than me, but it was a lot of that going on where it's like, okay, look, I've laid out all the facts, I've laid out the information. What you do with it is on you, and it was just constant disagreements, and it got to a point where like we could no longer help each other in any way, really. So we separated, and it was amicable. It wasn't like a bad split, but since then, the growth that I've gone through, it just helped me a lot, and so I'm in a much better place now than where I was. But so I moved out here before my last fight with the UFC to train, and I was still training full time. I lose that fight, and then I signed with another promotion that pays a little bit more. And so I'm like, all right, fine, this is cool. I'll go out there, I'll win a couple more fights, and I'll probably be right back in the UFC. And that one, I end up getting sidelined for a year because of COVID. And I'm in an exclusive contract with them, so I can't fight outside of them. But, throughout that whole time, I was still training. I'm in the gym. I'm like, okay, something's going to happen. A fight's going to happen. And, they say luck is where preparation meets opportunity. And I can't control when those opportunities are going to present themselves, but I can control how prepared I am. So I, made sure I was prepared, and I keep working, and I kept training.
That was a great fucking point.
Yeah.
You just said. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No worries. And so now, during that time, my savings are starting to run out around August of my last fight my fight at that point was February of 2020. my savings are running out around August. I get a new job, working, and it was just, I didn't really want a management position there. I didn't accept a salary position because I still, in my head, it was like, these fights are going to open up. So I'm doing that job for about 8 months. And then that promotion finally lets me start fighting elsewhere, and Fury presents itself. So I do my fights with Fury. And then when I'm fighting, well, literally, I'm out of town for that fight with Fury. After the fight, there's a conference call, and I was working at a youth home. That home gets shut down. So now I'm panicking because I'm like, oh, crap, I need another job. And I applied at the place I work now, and I've been there a little bit over a month, and it's going really well. And I see, a lot of stability, and I see a really clear-cut career path with this job. So now, and I'd already decided after that last fight, I had a lot to sort through. At that point, I was still trying to make that relationship work. So I'm sorting through all this stuff in my head, separation from my family. I have a 8-year-old, or my nephew's about to be 8. He's 6 at the time. That's my world. My aunt, uncle, grandma, brother, all my immediate families in Houston. So I'm sorting through all that, but I just know that in my head, I always felt burdened when I was living in Houston. You have your friends, everyone around you, they expect things from you when you're out there, and not even monetarily, but they just expect your time. And myself, like, I'm not very much into spending time out around people that I don't necessarily know. I do love people. I love that interaction, but after a certain point, it gets draining for me. And when I say no, or I can't do something, I don't want to be made to feel like a bad person because I'm respecting my own boundaries. And I couldn't do that in Houston. So moving out here, that just seemed like the next step in the coaching. I really had such a connection with my coaches out here, and I met a good group of friends out here that were all trying to do the same thing. And so that support system alone kind of was all I really needed to make that switch. And I'm not saying I didn't have solid supporters in Houston. I still have like 4 or 5 people from Houston that I talk to for everything that are still my biggest supporters, but they were in full support of me moving out here also. So it just, and I know that this is where I need to be for that aspect of my life, the fighting aspect, to reach its full potential.
I understand completely, and I love talking with you. You are so just like open and just really diving deep, and I really appreciate that. What, if you don't mind saying, what camp are you training with, or what team do you train with, or are you kind of like non-affiliated?
Oh, I'm with Jackson Link MMA. So Greg
Oh,
Jackson.
you are.
Yep.
Oh my God! So you see, so you must see Claressa Shields.
Yeah, all the
Okay,
time.
I interviewed Brittany Elkins. Brittany Elkin, not Elkin. She told me, don't call her Brittany. I interviewed Brittany Elkin, and we had a nice conversation. And so that's really awesome. So obviously you see the GOAT, or one of the GOATs, or top 5 GOATs. You know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I want to say something about what you said earlier, if you don't mind. And I'm sorry I didn't know that my 2 favorite websites, obviously besides UFC, but that shows that you're no longer with the organization, is I use Tapology and ShareDog. And unless they update it, and like Leah Letson of the UFC told me, oh, I have to update my my ShareDog page. I was like, oh, I didn't even know you had that up. I didn't know that was how it worked. But I respect women. I love women. We all came from women. And what I hear a lot of when I was dating, or when you date a narcissist, is, and sometimes when you get female therapists too. Now, women don't get mad, but you should recognize this. You hear a lot of females say, well, what do you bring? Like, well, what do you bring positive to her life? And that's a good point. But then also, guess what? What do you bring positive to our lives? Just because we have penises, what does that mean? We don't need any positivity. We don't need, like, it's got to be a mutual thing. I dated this one girl and it was all me, 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 me. What do you bring? What do you bring? What do you bring? And I was like, well, what do you bring? In my mind, and I started going, she's not bringing anything positive to me, and I'm feeling really bad about myself. But I just think that's an important thing to point out, that, it can't just be what positivity do you bring to the woman. It's got to be also, well, okay, you're a lady, because there's this gentleman you got to watch named Kevin Samuels. And you know who he is?
Yeah, I know who he is.
Yeah. And he says it like women are, I don't agree with his methods as far as how brutally honest he is, but hey, he's trying to get followers, so good for him. But he says some stuff that makes sense. And it's like, you got to be realistic. And you know what? It's not just about you. You can't just make it about you. It's got to be, if I want to be with this guy, okay, he brings something to me, but what do I bring to him? Am I supportive? Am I a good person to him? Do I understand his feelings? And the sex stuff, yeah, that's great, blah, 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 whatever. But I just wanted to point that out. And now I have another question. You were fighting for, or maybe you still are, Ari's fighting championship. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
What was that like what was that like to ask them to fight? Because you're still fighting for them, right?
No. They since released me because it's not a tenable situation. They don't know when they're going to be able to host fights again. And I've got a promotion down here that's willing to let me fight pretty much every month.
And that's
as long as
Fury.
they can find opponents. Yeah. So as long as they can find opponents for me, I'll just keep accepting.
Okay, because I the way it read was you were fighting there because all these sites are still saying you currently fight for Ari's, but they allowed you to fight for Fury. And I'm like, oh, so my question was, what's that negotiation like? Hey, can I fight for them? But if you're not fighting for them anymore, then somebody needs to update his Wikipedia. So.
Yeah, for my last fight, I was still fighting for them, and we had to go through like, if I'm gonna accept this fight, is it gonna be good for my brand? Will it increase my value when I do go and fight with them? So the opponent, it really came down to who I was fighting at that point, and if it was someone on the level of who I would be fighting for them, because they don't want to diminish their brand, right? So that's what that negotiation was like. And then after my last fight, they were just kind of like, we don't want to hold up your career. And so they just kind of let me go because they don't know when they're going to be able to host stuff again.
Okay, I understand. So I have a few more questions, and then I'm going to get like a superhero, like geek questions. But so you fought, listen, you have nothing to, you seem very confident. You seem what you do for a living is obviously going to help you in your own mental state. But I'm more impressed personally that you fought Justin Tafa than the fact that you fought Greg Hardy. Now you fought Greg Hardy. He's getting some clout. But and he's good. Don't get me wrong. He's good. But you lost to Justin Tafa, but the UFC, I have to admit, they don't just hand you like here's a guy. Yeah. So, you got nothing to be ashamed of at all. A loss to Justin Tafa, a loss to Greg Hardy, but you know what is interesting is you fought under some really good cards. You fought on the Cowboy, Iaquinta, and Iaquinta's cool. He's been, because I'm from Long Island, so he's been texting me and he's like, hey, can you send me a video first? before I come on, and I'm like, so I got to get this shit like moving here. But and then you fought under the Dos Santos versus Edwards. I hope I said his name right. I'm so terrible with certain names. So you're legit badass, and you know, I think that I was going to ask your opinion on the Cowboy win and the Dos Santos win, but if you want to, you know, they were wins, right? Like, so, you know, that's it. I mean, you know, I'm having more fun talking about this other shit with you. I guess I could ask the one question, and the MMA people might get mad at me and go, ask them these questions. So, you know, hey, Cowboy won, Dos Santos won. That's it. Okay, goodbye. So I do want to ask you though, what is your opinion? I think I know it, but I don't, because everybody, you shouldn't assume. It's terrible for assumptions. Conor versus, because you were there, like, meaning you're still there. You may not fight in the UFC now, but what's your opinion on Conor versus Dustin? Who do you think's gonna smoke each other?
I don't think it's either of them's really gonna get smoked. So here's the thing with those two guys. The first one was pretty one-sided for Conor. The second one, Conor looked good, but it showed that Dustin was a more complete fighter at that time. He just knew more, he did more, and he capitalized. So in that sense, it was one-sided for Dustin that time. This next one, though, and it's a rubber match. They're both. I mean, I feel like Conor. You have to respect Conor, because while his last 4 or 5 fights might not have gone his way necessarily, he still got there at a time when both those divisions were pretty competitive. And you look at the guys that he beat, and they've all gone to accomplish pretty amazing things. So Conor's was and still is the real deal. It depends on, which Conor shows up, but I think it'll be a much more technical and more calculated approach by both of these guys this time. So I don't think it's going to be a quick KO. I think it'll be a very good display of mixed martial arts this time. And I think it'll be a 3 to 4 round fight before somebody gets finished.
Wow. Okay. My opinion, and not that you asked it, but I'm giving it because I'm the host, and whatever.
Right.
So, this is a guy in Conor McGregor who Khabib slaps his friend, his best friend, slaps one of his good friends. Because I have several best friends, so I don't want to say it's his best friend, but he slaps his friend, flies all the way over to America, throws a dolly through a bus, gets arrested. That's hardcore because he's got the money. This kid, Jake Paul, who is, this YouTube fighter, I'm sure you're aware, everybody's aware, calls his wife a 4 and challenges him. And he says nothing, but then he says, oh, fair play. So I got to say, I think it's kind of like a Rocky syndrome, where Rocky 3 or Rocky 2, they start showing Rocky he's rich, and Mick is kind of setting him up with opponents. Not that's what the UFC is doing, because they're not. But I'm not saying he got soft, but a guy flies over from Ireland to get you because you slapped his friend, and then someone calls your wife a 4, and he's like, fair play. That's my bad accent. And it's like, you know what? I think he realizes he has more to lose now, because now he's as rich as Dana, if not more. And so I just think it's a different guy. And I think he realizes.
It is. And you also have to take into account also, like, the amount of maturity that he's gone through. I don't know how old he was when that happened, but he's different now. He's got another kid now. So he's got 2 kids, with the wife or whatever. And, when somebody comes in at that point in his life, you know, he was pretty much still a thug. You know, it hadn't really hit him how much money he had, and
He was a thug. Yeah.
yeah,
In a
and
good way.
but
Yeah.
yeah, but now, you know, you look at it and you look at the growth that he's gone through as a person. You know, he's much more humble in the way he speaks and acts now. And I just think that he's more aware as an individual. So to me, you know, somebody insults my girl about like what she looks like, or insults a girl that I'm sleeping with, and you know, says that she's a four. It's like, all right, well, like, you're not the one fucking, I am. So like, I don't care. Like, you know, I don't care. But
And she's not
you
a
know,
four. She's not a four.
yeah,
She's beautiful. She's beautiful.
right. So again, though, you know, there's people out there that find attraction is such an individual thing, and it's so subjective. Like, people are always shocked when I'm like, I don't find Rihanna attractive. Like, that doesn't do it for me. Like, a lot of people, I can objectively state that she is a gorgeous woman. For
Okay,
me
wait.
though, like, I'm just not, it's not something I'm going for. So and she wouldn't give me the time of day anyway. So
Exactly.
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Like, it's one of those things where it's like you have to take into account that. So when I look at a woman, it's not about like, do I think whatever of her? It's do I even think that that's a tenable, you know, a tenable path to pursue? It's probably not. You know, so I don't waste my time. You know.
Well, I have to tell you, we have to cut this short because Rihanna. Wow, really?
Yeah.
I gotta go. So no, I'm just kidding. No, I feel the same. You know, I feel the same way. Now, look, I'm a man, and I'm a therapist, and so I say that because I have clients. Are you still there, or did I lose you?
No, I'm still here. It was a work text.
Okay, that's fine. And I don't wanna, you know, I'm a man, and I hope clients, you know, still understand this and they don't take offense to this, but I feel the same way about Jennifer Lopez, but like where she doesn't,
Wow,
yeah,
man.
but, let me tell you this. If Rihanna put her, guys, this is real talk. Don't be sensitive, Sally's here. If Rihanna put her hand on your inner thigh and was like, let's go, you're going to go. If Jennifer Lopez, which is never going to happen, put her hand on my inner thigh, okay, let's go. But if she doesn't, I don't know. I think for 50, she's stunning. But for me, what I look at now more as a man who's 46 years old, it's not so much about the beauty. It is. It's when it happens, you see it. But what else is there? And
Right.
I think that's just from growing. So I got a couple more questions, and I think you're gonna have fun with these questions. But I'll ask you the last serious UFC question, and then I'll ask you the silly questions. So, what's next? Do you want to get back to UFC? Are you happy if you got into Bellator? Would you be cool? Because you're in the right camp, man. I mean,
Yeah.
PFL.
And you know, I do want to get back to the UFC, but my reasons are like I want to even out my record there. That's the only thing in my life that I've done that people can objectively look at and say you were not successful there. And I'd have to agree with them. So that's I want to get back there. But you know, if another big, I also recognize that that was an opportunity in my life that didn't necessarily capitalize on, one, and two, you know, it also showed me some things, and I really grew as a person from it. So if that's past and that's not something that presents itself again, I'm okay with that. And if another promotion were to come along and, you know, pay me something crazy, yeah, I'd do it. I mean, but I fight now because I truly enjoy it. I do want to get back to a big show and win, you know, make a run at a world title and a major promotion. But, you know, I'm 29 years old. If that's not what life has in store for me, I'm okay with that.
That's a great attitude, and you're so young. I didn't even know, but yeah, I guess I could see your point. You would like to maybe even out your record, or even you know, maybe a couple fights in UFC. You win 2, 3 in a row. And then, you know, you could say, but I still think, listen, you know, you're still one of the baddest people on the planet just for getting in the UFC. And I mean, you know, yeah, I know there's levels to this thing, but you're at the right camp. And hey, good for you, man. And if you could ever get me to talk to Claressa Shields, I'd buy you lunch for a month. No, but that's okay. Brittany Elkin was a very nice person. She took it, the situation very, very cool, very down to earth. But now let's get to the silly questions. Okay. So these are the silly questions. I got 2 silly questions.
All right.
Because you know the aliens are coming, right?
Yeah.
That's why they keep seeing all this stuff. They're coming. They're coming, but they don't know about the UFC. But here's the thing. They don't know about MMA, is what I'm saying also. So now, here's what happens. The aliens come down and they do this thing. They go zoom. And now all the tech, because they're like 1,000 years advanced, they shut off all our technology. So bombing them, fighter jets, stealth, bullets even. The guns don't work. So now we gotta fight. We gotta fight the aliens, right? And you know who's gonna fight the aliens? The UFC. Or MMA fighters, right? So now the MMA fighters, because it's all hand to hand now. We're fighting them, and you guys are doing leg locks, and you're breaking the necks and all this shit that regular people can't do. And, you know, let's say, you know, whatever. It's the little green ones, but they're super strong, right?
Right.
They got that. I'm a small guy. So they got that. I don't want to say words because people get so mad at words now. They got that small person strength. And, you know, so now the aliens are like, oh shit. So Dana White's like, look, we're running out of people. So let's bring Bellator. And then he goes, look, we got to bring the PFL. And he goes, don't fuck this up, PFL. And I'm just kidding because I've interviewed PFL guys. And it's a joke. And Brittany Elkin fought in the PFL. And if anyone gets offended by that, like just, you know, drink a beer or something. So you're fighting. You got all this. The alien says, look, we got this master alien. Put your best guy against our master alien. You win. We leave the galaxy forever. Who's the fighter that you want to fight that master alien?
John Jones.
I said that. I think that more than Francis Ngannou, because Francis Ngannou's just gonna punch him real hard, and the guy's
right.
And he's gonna like. And I thought either him or, but you have to say that because you work with him. But that's okay. I agree with you. Or Khabib, in my opinion. So I 100% agree with you. John Jones is the guy.
Yeah, John's the guy.
Yeah. Hey, listen, I'm not saying these are good questions. They're stupid, but I love them. I'm a 12-year-old boy and I have the mic. So, and then my final question is, stupid cough. I do this question for every interview. I end it with this. If Bruce Lee were alive, he would blank. And I'll give you an example. If Bruce Lee were alive, and he could be young Bruce Lee, like we remember him, or he could be, if he was alive, he'd be what, 50, 60? I don't know. So if Bruce Lee were alive, he would be on the Joe Rogan podcast. Now you go.
If Bruce Lee were alive, he would get smoked by Khabib.
Everybody's saying that. They're like, oh, he would get. But he did have aspects of mixed martial arts once he realized that his stuff wasn't, you know, there was a gentleman named Gene LaBelle who worked with him on, I guess, the Green Hornet or something. And he did realize, like, oh, just straight up Kung Fu isn't going to cut it. And then he added some stuff in there. So And then I think I forget what it's called.
Jeet Kundo, right?
Yeah, and I have a bad back, so I like Jeet Kune Do. I don't take it because they do a lot of these kicks, lower kicks, and then these.
Yeah.
I also like this whole karate blitz thing they got going, blah, 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 because like
Yeah.
Machida does, but that's not Jeet Kune Do. But and then so my last one for Bruce Lee is, and then you could do your last one. If Bruce Lee were alive, he would be verified on Instagram.
That's a good one. If Bruce Lee were alive, he'd have double-digit children.
You think so?
Yeah, I think so.
10 kids?
At least, yeah.
I'm gonna
Not all by the same chick, we don't know that, but I think he would have at least 10.
Well, he couldn't have them from the same chick. He couldn't because she would be 60.
Yeah. Well, like you look at Bruce Lee, and he is a very, he was in tune, but he was a very ego-driven person, and I feel like he would have a lot of kids as a result of that.
He had Bruce Lee is an interesting guy because he was hurt for about 6 months, right? And so he did a lot of writing. This is a very advanced interview I got here. So he did a lot of writing, and he was bedridden for 6 months. I went down a rabbit hole, and it's such a waste of time. But he wrote a lot. And he wrote on theories, and he was you would have enjoyed the conversation with him. I think he was very like mind driven about certain things about martial arts. And he actually wrote something that they took and made into a very cool series on Cinemax, which I think it's called Warrior. It's one of the best shows I've ever seen. And it's based on the writings of Bruce Lee, and it's based on real characters and things like that. When the Chinese came over to America, they were not treated very well. But this was all super fun. I got to ask you about Bruce Lee. I got to ask you about aliens. We talked a little bit about Avengers. We talked a little bit about your history. What's next for you? You were very open, and I just wanted to thank you for your time. Do you have anything? I want to promote your fight. It's with Fury, right, on July 25th. And you're scheduled to fight, I'm so bad with names, Eric Lunsford. Is that right?
Eric Lunsford, yeah.
Lunsford, sorry, Eric. And so how do you see that going?
I see either a first round KO or a second round ground and pound finish. It's I see these things going.
Yeah.
It's different when you fought the level of competition that I fought. When you fight guys that haven't done that, or that you just know objectively aren't at the level of your training partners, you have a different type of confidence. And no disrespect to the guy, I mean, he's willing to step in there where 7 other people backed out. So clearly he believes in himself, and he's fought on some big shows, but I just don't feel that he's the same level of talent as my training partners,
Well, you have one of the best training partners ever. So, so 7 people backed out to fight you?
Yeah, man, it was crazy. They would accept and then turn it down. Like,
I guess they researched you and went, I'm good. I think I know your answer to this, but I have to ask it because it popped in my head. The whole Francis Ngannou, John Jones thing. I mean, I don't think he's afraid, obviously, but he wants to get paid. Does it get to a point though where, he deserves to get paid, but is it? Do you ever look at it and go, but he's your teammate, so you can't really, is it where you're pricing yourself out? Like if they offer you $5 million, is that enough to fight Francis Ngannou? Apparently not. Like,
for me it is, but for John, it's not. So here's the thing, pricing himself out. You look at it in the UFC when you're a sport in your fledgling years, right? Which is what MMA is. We're about 30 years,
Yeah.
give or take, into it. You're driven by your stars, right? You haven't established a product at that point that you know is going to sell regardless, right? So you're driven by your big names, you're driven by your big stars. And John Jones has been a big name or a big star in this for over a decade. And
Over a decade.
he hasn't been compensated fairly. Now, granted, he's built, even though he wasn't getting compensated the way he should, he's built enough for himself to where he can make a demand. Say, look, I'm at a point in my life where I don't want to fight. He does love competition. He does love all that, but he's going to get paid fairly for it. So he's at a point now where he's looking. You also have to take into account he has two brothers, right?
Yeah, NFL dudes.
World champion athletes themselves. And one of his brothers won 2, and I believe the other one's won 1 or hasn't won 1 yet. And when you see people that have accomplished a fraction of what you've accomplished, he's won how many world titles? Like, I lost count after 10, you know? Like, when you've won that many world titles and you're that many times of a repeat champion, and you see people close to you that haven't accomplished that are getting compensated exponentially more than you, it opens your eyes, right? And then when you also have the ability to sit back and say, I'm not doing this unless I'm compensated fairly, you have to take that, right? Now, there's other people, different people fight for different reasons, and for each man's motivation, it's different for them. So I can't really speak too much into that because I don't really know what all of his motivations are or any of that, but I do know that he's not pricing himself out of anything because he carried that organization for a while. And, for him to ask to be fairly compensated, it's not too much. I mean, you look at what Conor McGregor makes per fight. You look at what other boxers make, and boxing isn't even like MMA because, MMA, there's other promotions now where there's multiple different champions. But you look at boxing, I think there's 7 different champions, 7 different championship caliber organizations, and each of them is getting paid way more than MMA fighters are. So I think that there's something to be said for them. When you sell a company for over $1 billion and
$4 billion.
Yeah, for $4 billion, and you have less than 500 athletes or right at 500 athletes fighting for you, the fact that some of them have to struggle between fights doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
I mean, I hope to talk to Dana White one day, but I will say this. I talk to UFC fighters who have roommates, and it's just an odd thing to me. Like, really? You have a roommate? And it's like, yeah, because my contract is such and such. And I know everyone has to be careful at the UFC because you don't want to piss off the boss, and I don't blame them. But you know what I like about John Jones is obviously he's done some things. I don't really care about the did I lose you? I don't care so much about the PED stuff. Like, he got caught, whatever. But the driving away thing, that's fine. I mean, that's not fine is what I meant to say. But no, that's not fine. And I think he knows that and he recognizes, but he's a human. But what I like about the guy is when these riots were happening, there was video, and even DC said, you know what? I may not like the guy. He may not be my favorite person, but I respect the guy. Here's a guy who could beat the shit out of 99% of people. And he's going up to people and he's like, give me that can. You stop damaging the local businesses here in our community. I don't know if you saw those videos.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, we all got good. We all got bad. So, and here's another thing, and then I definitely going to let you go because you've been super cool about it. Because you just made me get a thought here. I wanted to very badly see Anthony Joshua fight Tyson Fury, but Deontay Wilder stepped in and said, no, you got this thing. So, okay, fine. So now Joshua's like, what the fuck? And in my mind, I said, and I wish I know it won't happen, but I was like, oh my God, if Francis Ngannou just had like a little bit more like, I want to fight Anthony Joshua. And then he just puts Dana White in a situation like, fuck it. I have no choice. I would love to see that fight. I think Ngannou gets killed, but it's still, who wouldn't pay to see that? But let's say you can't have that happen. And now you got John Jones, and you're going to think I'm crazy. John Jones is not a boxer. Francis Ngannou has tried boxing, wasn't successful. I'd pay $100 to see Anthony Joshua box the shit out of your buddy. And there's no disrespect there to John Jones. I mean, he would lose, but I'd still pay. And I think, why not? He needs a fight. It just popped in my head because I'm thinking Anthony Joshua versus Francis Ngannou is legit. But why not? If he's not with the UFC anymore and he gets out of contract, go make 50 million and get your ass kicked. Why not?
Yeah, I think it'd be a good little exhibition for John. I think, it's funny. John's got all these people talking about him by lifting weights in his garage. It's like, it's crazy how big a deal he is. But yeah, I like to see that too. John would probably take it as an exhibition fight. You never know, but one thing about John that nobody can really dispute is he's one of the most complete mixed martial artists ever. And John can just wake up and do things that certain people could train their whole lives and never be able to do. And I've seen it, watching John hit pads, watching John train. It's crazy how quickly he can pick things up and then manipulate and adjust those things to fit with his style.
How do you think he would fare against the current light heavyweight champ, whose name I know his name, but I'm not going to butcher it?
Jan Blachowicz.
Yeah.
Oh man, I think John will beat him. It would either be a decision victory or John would submit him.
And my favorite John Jones memory, because I like Lyoto Machida a lot. I like that karate blitz stuff and that front kick to Randy Couture. But my favorite John Jones memory, don't you yawn. But my favorite John Jones memory is the standing choke. And I mean, this guy is very, very, very talented. And I just want to say that. I want to thank you for your time because you yawned. So now my feelings are hurt.
Oh, you're good.
No, I'm fucking around. But thank you so much. This is going to go down in history. This is my first shirtless interview. I interviewed Eric Anders getting on an airplane, and he's like this. And it was, hey, man, I think I'm going to interview somebody taking a shit one day because it's just, hey, man, you guys are giving me your time. I really appreciate it. And I'm going to put your links in. I'll promote your Instagram and Twitter and get that out there before July 25th. Will that fight be televised in anywhere?
It'll be on UFC Fight Pass. So if I'm on the main card, it's on UFC Fight Pass. If I'm on the undercard, it's on the YouTube channel live link. So, but yeah, you'll be able to watch it.
Well, if you get on the UFC Fight Pass, please send me a tweet so I know, so I'll send another video out like, hey guys, this guy can be watched on the Fight Pass because that's still good, man. Why not get as many eyes on you as you can and do as much as you can, man. So thank you for help for this, and thank you for helping children in that area. And you're a really great guy, at least to me right now. Maybe if I came there, you'd give me a wedgie. I don't know, but
no, I wouldn't do
that. All right, because you're about a foot. Well, not quite a foot, but quite a bit bigger than me. So yeah, thank you so much, sir. And you enjoy your 4th of July. I appreciate you taking the time to do this.
For sure, man. You have a good one.
You too. And we'll talk again, okay?
All right. Later,
all
brother.
Right. Take care, man. All right. All right. I like to pretend I'm going to shut it off and then let them shut it off. Fucking cough. So that was Juan Adams, the Kraken. And I see what he's saying about he wants to make his record in the UFC, even it out, because I believe he was 2-3. But you know what? Not everybody can go. He still overall has a very good record. And when you get in the cage, anything could happen. And so let's see, he's 6-3. All right. All 6 of his wins have come by knockout, which makes sense considering he's 6'5", 300 pounds. I'm guessing walking around. And I really enjoyed it. I really like when these guys open up, and I'm learning so much about things. I've talked to people that have told me about 3D mammograms. These little tiles now are being used for bad people to follow girls home. I've learned about so many different things, how people are feeling, how they deal with diversity. And it's been a real eye-opener. I'm going to be able to say and do what I want on this, I think, because I'm just going to sponsor myself. But seemed like a really nice guy, and I wish him nothing but success. Doesn't mean I don't like the guys that they fought. Like, for example, I just talked to Doricus Duplessis, and he's fighting Trevin Giles. And I wish him well because he took the time. But I'm sure Trevin's a nice fella. I'd like to talk to him, you know. Ken Shamrock is thinking about doing it. I'd love to talk to him. There's so many people I would love to talk to. So I hope you guys enjoy this. And if you don't, then just don't watch it. I guess that's really it, right? So thank you so much. That's Elvis. That's James Dean. That's Marilyn Monroe and Humphrey Bogart. And Marilyn Monroe is giving Dean like a look that, I think is, and he's playing hard to get. He's not even giving her attention. So James Dean. So, all right. Thanks, guys. Take care. See you soon. I'm going to try to be knocking these out about 4 times a week. So thanks for watching. Cousin Pat Therapy. All right. Bye-bye.